Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons, where we interview ministry leaders and talk about topics of interest to Kentucky Baptists and hope to make all of us better leaders. My guest today is Dr. Wesley Paul, and our topic is the life of an evangelist. Wesley, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Thank you, Todd, for having me. Really appreciate you asking me. Thank you.
Let me tell you about Wesley. Wesley Paul is an international evangelist who has preached the gospel in more than 40 countries, from small gatherings to packed stadiums. He was born in Bangalore, India, and now living in Kentucky. Wesley serves as a network evangelist for the Louis Palau Next Generation Alliance and is mentored by leaders connected to the Billy Graham legacy. He holds advanced degrees in theology and counseling and also works as a psychotherapist at Campbellsville University. Wesley and his wife, Debbie, have 2 children and live in Springfield, Kentucky. And Wesley, that's where you and I first became acquainted. So I've known you for a long time, but for those who may not know you, tell us how you came to faith in Jesus.
Well, I appreciate getting a chance to meeting you when we were at Springfield Baptist Church. Many afternoons, you took me out with you to door knocking. So that's one way I got to know you. Thank you. We've done that several times.
Yep.
And your question now is, how did I come to know Christ?
Yes.
I was growing up in India to good Christian parents. They took me to church. We went to the Episcopalian church. I had all the foundational pieces, Sunday school, family of faith. Earlier on, I realized that as a Christian, you have to make a decision to follow Christ. So vacation Bible school, church activities all reminded me that I need to give my life to Christ. I would also go to crusades or gospel festivals that many gospel preachers came to preach in India, and they would tell us to get saved. And I went front or to the, raise my hand, go to the altar call. Yeah. I don't know, many, many times. And every time I sinned, I thought I lost Jesus. So I'd go find him again. So that was my routine. Then when I was a teenager, I really kind of said, this is not for me. It seems like every time he comes in, he goes out when I sin. Maybe when I get older, just kind of fought, rebelled. So from about 16 to 18, I totally ran from God, rebelled. So it was on an Easter Sunday that my youth leader kept asking me, are you coming? Can you come talk to me? I just put him off. I was going to go party with my friends. That was Easter Sunday. But that afternoon, I was trying to take a nap, and my mom was listening to a gospel radio program, and I couldn't sleep. God was speaking to me as I was listening, and the speaker was saying, if you hear God's voice and you're running from him and you don't obey him, you don't turn your heart towards him, there will come a time when you will not hear, when you will not hear at all. That scared me.
Yep.
That scared me. So I got on my bicycle, went to the youth leader's house. I said, okay, I'm here. And so, got the gospel spiel from him. And he said, why don't you give God a chance today? And I said, I've tried many times. And I gave him this thing that I'd struggled with. And he says, if everything feels dead in your heart and God's not alive, today's a good day. It's Easter. So coming up on Easter, I'm really, believing that many people, I hope, will do what I did. I knelt on my knees and I said, okay, God, if you're for real, come into my heart. Whatever's dead, come alive. And I got off my knees. It was not even a prayer. It was a challenge. Yeah. Yeah. And God is so good. He turned me around. I was fighting with my parents, doing all kinds of stupid things. I instantly found myself running from all that, and asked my parents to forgive me, started sharing Christ with my friends. I got a new love for Jesus and for following him. So I knew there was something different. And now I was ready to be baptized. Until then, I fought that. And now God had really changed my heart. So I was 18 years old, April 11th, 1982. Oh, wow. I remember it so clearly.
What a great story. Jesus is seeking and saving that which is lost. He was looking for you, and You didn't find him, he found you. So Wesley, tell us, how did you move into a call to evangelism? How did that call come to you?
So it was like when I heard these preachers, when they come to preach in India. So that's why you preachers should go preach in India and Africa and other places. You never know. A 7-year-old boy, 8-year-old boy might be standing there thinking, one day I'd preach like this man. Yeah. I'd take his sermons and be thinking how I'd preach it. Mm-hmm. And as I grew up, I was thinking, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Even now, today, when I see children or young people, I zone in on them. When I'm preaching, I'll think maybe there's another Wesley sitting and listening. Yeah. So that's how I heard my call, Todd. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about vocational evangelists. Wesley, it's likely that most believers do not even know an evangelist, even though, according to Ephesians 4:11 and 12, the evangelist is a gift to the church for the equipping of the saints, for the work of ministry. So what are some of the early challenges that you faced as an evangelist, someone who has answered this call to go and equip the saints for evangelism, to preach evangelistic preaching, urging, persuading people to come to Jesus? What were some of your early challenges in answering this call?
Well, I came to America when I was 20 years old. I was 19 when I went to Canada. I went to Bible school there for a year. I knew I had answered the call, but I wasn't sure what I was going to really do, whether it be a pastor or a youth pastor or an evangelist. So I thought, well, I'll just go through the training bit. And so when I came to Kentucky, I went to University of the Cumberlands, at that time called Cumberland College. Mm-hmm. I was in that preparation mode. Thankfully, the BSU Student Union had teams that we would go out to various churches, and they sent us out as revival teams. I was a revival preacher. There would be a song leader, youth leader. So we'd go preach in West Virginia, Ohio, Tennessee. I got my break preaching like that. And so that prepared me. So sometimes people wait for a platform or invitation. Oh, you must be called. You must be a great evangelist. Come preach. No, those doors don't open like that. I remember Henry Blackaby once told me, big doors open on small hinges. Big doors open on small hinges. So he said, if 30 people go there, if it's 3 people go there, if it's 300 people go there, and big doors will open, but you got to go through those small opportunities. And so thank God for those BSU campus ministries. Keep it up. Send your students to churches. Let them share Christ. And that was my training ground. Then I went to New Orleans Seminary, and then I went to be a pastor in Iowa. So that was another training ground that God prepared me. I could have jumped out and been an evangelist, and so many young people do that. They feel called to being an evangelist, and they don't get a mentor or they don't get the training, and then they'll flail out there, flop out there. And so I'm glad for that training. Then when I was in Iowa, evangelist and apologist Ravi Zacharias came through, and I respected that he was of my same Indian origin. I looked up to him, and there he was at the university, and we connected there. Took me out to dinner, and I told him, Ravi, I'd like to do what you're doing, if I can carry your bags or travel with you. He said, yeah, why don't you come out to Atlanta for a week? And then I did go there. Long story short, I didn't end up working for him. He had hired some more people, but I did learn about Luis Palau, and Luis was a real evangelist. Mm-hmm. And he was looking for young people to mentor. So there was about 18, 20 of us that first signed up with him when he started the Next Generation Alliance. Wow. Luis said, Billy mentored me, gave me opportunities. Billy at one time gave him like $50,000 and said, I want to set you up so that you can be successful. So that's what Luis did for me. Gave me confidence, mentored me, gave me a stack of videos, books. When he learned he had cancer and he was going to pass away, he sent me a box full of books. And amazing stuff that when you let somebody mentor you. I think a lot of evangelists, you can step out there and nothing wrong with that, but it'd be great if you were mentored. You get that courage and boldness. when I would go to Brazil or South America and I'll say, hey, I'm being mentored by Luis Palau, doors open just like that. I can sit and talk with pastors and leaders of the churches, and they respected that I was connected with him.
So,
Yeah.
Wesley, I hear you describing your calling like so many, that you sensed a calling but didn't know what to do with it. You saw some opportunities or were invited to go and preach with a BSU Sun team, it sounds like,
Yes.
and you said
Yeah.
yes to those, and then those developed into more and more, and you got some training, answered a call. And so tell us about Wesley Paul International Ministries. How did that begin, and what is its mission?
Well, I began in Iowa when I just was responding to the call. I'd now been a pastor for 8 years in Iowa with Southern Baptist church planting movement. Then, this mentoring with Luis Palau, I saw many evangelists stepping out. Like Luis, I formed a nonprofit, and I came to Kentucky, and I set up a board. I began to ask people to support our ministry, did my own fundraising. As an evangelist, you have to raise your own support. And so that was my early days in 1999. Came and introduced myself to KBC, and at that time there were like maybe 40 evangelists. And so we used to get to fellowship with them and spend time. And so I think it's just as an evangelist learning to associate with the right people, right pastors and leaders were some things that I did in my early days.
Wesley, if you think about the work of an evangelist, what does that work involve? For someone who has no idea what an evangelist is or does, what is the work of an evangelist?
Well, you get to go preach in many places. You fly around and you have big pulpits that collect offerings and make you rich, man. That's the idea people have of evangelists. And sometimes even now I resist telling people I'm an evangelist. I tell them I'm a speaker. I'm an international speaker or something, because this misnomer, this stereotype that people have of evangelists is harsh. But to me, an evangelist is one who tells the good news. So I think if you have something within you that you want to announce to the world and share, that's what an evangel is. Isn't a messenger, evangel. The angels were evangels when they came to the shepherds. They were the first evangelists. And so I think an evangel is one who announces the message. And what message do we have? We have a very good news.
Yeah.
And Paul says in Romans 10, from Illyricum to Jerusalem, I went anywhere I could go to preach. So I think that evangelist has that burden and that call. I've got to go preach. I remember putting a world map on my office, and I lay hands on those countries, and I say, God, take me here. God, take me there. So you have that burden and that passion to go and preach. And the second thing is you want to equip the church. Evangelist wants to train people. So I'm always looking for opportunities to, thank you, Todd, and others in KBC who trained me in 3 circles evangelism or EE or something. You learn those things and you say, hey, Pastor, I have these training gifts and abilities. Can I come train your people? Can I do a weekend seminar? So I think evangelists need to be out there being invited, go out to churches, train people, equip people. I've done that for the Baptist Association, and you came to preach for them with Brother Jim
Clance.
Dr. Clance, yeah. He hosted me, and there are churches that are interested, and besides doing revivals, I think evangelists should be out there training churches and individuals.
So Wesley, you pour out yourself through preaching and ministering. How do you make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you're staying fresh while you're preaching the gospel and ministering to other people?
I love that question, Todd. I think your message comes from when your heart is set apart. 1 Peter 3:15, Peter says, but first set apart Christ in your heart. I think our message comes when we set him apart in our hearts and when we worship him. And Todd, my discipline is, even this morning, I get on the presence of God, put on the headphones, listen to worship music, listen to the word of God, zone out. I have to take care of my soul. when I'm walking intimately with Christ, when I've set him apart first, out of that comes my song, out of that comes my message, out of that comes my anointing, my authority. Acts 4:13, and they recognized they'd been with him. These are ordinary school men. I think the things that distinguish us, Moses says, how will they distinguish? If you don't, presence doesn't go with me, God. I'm not taking another step from here. He says, your presence distinguishes me. I think an evangelist, if he's just got sermons in his head and got this bundle of energy and wants to get out there and doesn't spend time with God, I think it could be a lot of wound up energy. But I want to slow down, wind it down, sit in the feet of God, at the feet of God, let him speak to me. And I think that's what builds that passion and that love. So the heart of the evangelist needs to learn to gain the heart of Christ, be with him, lean on his bosom. And when we lean on his bosom, we feel his passion like John felt. And then we gain his heart, and then we are propelled, catapulted into our spheres of, preaching or crusades or whatever platform God opens up. So that's an answer to that question. Yes, sure. Spending time with God, and then I think also physical discipline. I work out every day. I spend time preparing this temple. I try to eat right. I try to take care of myself. I think we can't let ourselves go as evangelists. I want to preach till I'm 90, 100. I want to drop dead somewhere preaching. How can I do that if I'm not in shape? Right. How can I do that? I'm carrying this message, man. I want to get it out, and I want to do it in a good way. I don't want to die young. If I die young, that's fine. The Lord gave me a full life, and I lived well. But I'm going to take care of this. So I'm going to work out. I'm going to not lose these vocal cords, these muscles, mind, intellect, all of these things that God has given me.
Wesley, a lot of pastors would say that the people in their church are just not evangelistic. They don't share the gospel very often, and they have a hard time motivating their church members to share Jesus, even in some cases, even to invite people to church. What have you seen as effective, or how do you try to encourage believers to be more intentional in sharing the gospel?
I know some might not agree with me. Take off the guilt.
Okay.
Take off the guilt. I think people are preached to and obligated to, made to feel like I got to witness, I got to share my faith. Look, God is very patient. He's very kind. He's given us every equipment, every resource. I think he says, Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me? If you love me, you feed my sheep. I think that's where it's at, Todd. I think it's the heart matter. Set Christ apart in your heart. And when you are in love with Christ, your life will be so transformed. Your life will be so changed that people will ask a question, and then you can give them the answer, the hope that is within you. 1 Peter 3:15. How can you give an answer for the hope that is within you when they're not asking? They're not asking you, and you're shoving the gospel down their throat and making them go to church and telling them, all kinds of things, being judgmental. People turn that away, are turned off to that. So I want a church to be healthy. I want them to be healthy. Pastors, if I could encourage you, disciple the people, tell them to be in love with Jesus, have an intimate walk with Jesus. If they're walking intimately with Jesus, then that's going to be an overflow. My evangelism is an overflow. Yeah. If people see me and they say, what's different, or they sense something about me, and they ask me questions, like I was on a plane going to Egypt, and this Muslim lady was sitting next to me, said, I saw you at the counter, and then I saw you getting on this plane, and I was hoping you would sit next to me so I could talk to you. And I was thinking, a Muslim lady wants to talk to me? Mm-hmm. I mean, she was wearing a hijab and everything. And then she asked me, where are you going? Where are you coming? Are you going? And then she started this conversation. And the more I talked to her, she asked me the question, what do you do? I'm going to Egypt to share the gospel with people. Oh, my husband's an Egyptian. Then we started talking. It's something about me that even made her want to talk to me. What is it that people should ask us questions? Again, don't wait till people ask questions. We do have opportunities to share Christ, and they're going to come up because if you pray for people, God will open those doors. But anyway, that's a long answer to your question.
Let me interact with you a little bit on something that you said. You said remove the guilt, and anything that's motivated by guilt is often a short-lived motivation. And yet, genuine guilt comes from disobeying God, right? And if God's given us the Great Commission and we're not obeying Him, then there may be some genuine guilt that He's given us the Great Commission and we're not obeying Him. Wesley, you and I walked through Springfield and we shared the gospel door to door. And that wasn't guilt-driven. It was. We knew we were called to share the gospel. We wanted other people to hear the good news. And I find that when I share Jesus, I want to share Jesus. When I witness to lost people, I want to witness to more lost people. Does that ring true with you? I mean, you and I had one of the most antagonistic encounters I've ever experienced, and it looked like we were going to have to be in a fight because the person was so aggressive.
Yes, he was.
When he talked back to us. Do you find that sharing the gospel propels you forward to want to share the gospel more?
Absolutely. I was on a plane coming back from Arizona. It was like a midnight red eye, you know, it was a 3.5-hour flight. I wanted to take a nap, and I didn't. But this lady realized I was an evangelist, and she was putting the screws to me. She was so mad about evangelists and calling me on it, and I was so infuriated, frustrated. I said, you know what? You are in my shoes. You're acting like the evangelist, trying to shove something down my throat and making me fess up and apologize for what I do. And that made me think there are going to be people antagonistic. We've got to keep our cool. We've got to, have our boundaries. But that makes us even more. I came back to the guys I mentor and I said, guys, there are going to be people like this that will, ask us questions and make us doubt our calling and why we do what we do. So I think when we do find those type of people, it only makes us, fuels our fire and says, there are these people that are lost and they're going to hell and they don't have a good answer. And somehow, God, I need to be prepared more. I need to prepare others more. And so that's why I think when we are faced with those type of things, it should only make us realize there are people who are having a hard time. How do I make it simple for them? Not simple, but in a way that is clear, in a way that is more, understandable, and not being off front.
Yeah, and they're lost, Wesley, right? I mean, lost people are lost, and lost people are going to act like lost people, and Jesus understood that. Jesus interacted with people who were far from God. Wesley, there are lots of small churches in Kentucky, lots of rural churches. What would be a suggestion or two about how those churches may begin to engage their community? They have services on Sunday morning. They welcome people to come, and many of them are ready for guests. But how would you encourage those churches to intentionally engage their communities with the gospel?
I love doing this. When I was at this little church in Iowa, there was 8 adults, 4 young people, 12 people. I heard Jerry Falwell say when he took Thomas Road Baptist, he said he would go every day, pound the streets, knock on doors, made 100 visits a day. And I said, man, that is fantastic. I want to do that. That inspired me, getting out there, pounding the doors and knocking the streets and knocking on doors. And then I heard, but I was part of Pastor James Hurd. I don't know, some of you hearing might know him. He was in Gardenside, Lexington. I had the privilege of working for him a summer. He'd pull out these cards and he says, 45 visits, guys. 45 visits is what I do a week. Here's 10 cards. You guys go see these 10 people. He didn't make us do what he was doing, but he'd give us 10, 15 cards. These are guests, new people that came to our church. Go visit them. I think visitation, we've got to get back to that. Yep. Todd, you do that so well. You go and encourage pastors. Man, I take my hats off to you. You're a great evangelist, and you put to practice when you came to speak at the association meeting in Danville. You and I went down there before you went and spoke at 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. We knocked on doors on a rainy day. I remember you had the umbrella. I mean, rain, shine. You're out there, man. So I think if pastors could see Todd, they could see this heart of a leader. They see the heart of Jesus. Jesus said the shepherd goes looking for the sheep. Oh, yeah. The woman looks for the coin. Yeah. The only one that didn't go was the older son. He sat back and he was fussing and fuming at his dad. And when the younger brother came, he was so disrespectful. I think some of our elders and our church members need to stop behaving like the religious older brother. That's who Jesus referred to. And we need to just get the heart of Jesus and say, I'm going to be a shepherd that go looking for. Yeah. What a great time now, Easter. I'm mentoring a bunch of leaders. I send them from a church I attend now, postcard the church had of Easter. And I said, man, why don't you try this at your church? I saw another church in Cincinnati baptize people and have them share their stories. And I say, hey, pastors that I mentor, I say, guys, you should try this. Have people share their testimonies, how they came to Christ. Maybe that'll, lead other people to see that there are people that come into Christ. If you just invited them to a Bible study, if they're just invited to church. So I think if you're a small church, if you're any church, just learn to invite people. Easter is a good time now to invite people. Knock on doors. Teach your people how to share their faith. Yep. And see the potential for your church to find. Ask your people. Every time that I do a revival or a crusade, I give them the Operation Andrew card. Mm-hmm. Operation Andrew card asks people to put 5-10 names. So maybe even in the beginning of the year, or you're getting ready to do a revival, have an Operation Andrew card. Billy Graham has used that. Luis Palau has used that in all our festivals. The crowds come because people prayed for these souls, and then they invited them to come, and they offered a ride to these people to come. So I think if we can get our people in the church to start thinking like that, love Jesus, start praying for your neighbors, your friends, be intentional, and start inviting people, I think any church can grow. So by the way, that church in Iowa, I was there a year, from 12 people, 8 adults, 4 children, it went to 75, 80 people. Yeah. That's in a year I did that. I turned around. Yeah. Well, you're an evangelist. You do that so well. No, anybody who can pound the street. Ask Jerry Fowle. He's not around, but listen to his stuff. I think if pastors, we can take your example, Todd. I think we can all get out there and meet people, introduce our church. Hey, this is my church. How can I serve you? Get to know people in our community. They know our face. They'll call us for deaths, weddings, problems they're having. That's right. I think people will start. Abraham, is it Cozier, Trinity out in Falmouth? Mm-hmm. He's done a beautiful job with that. I mean, that his church is growing like crazy. It's just because, pastors take ownership of their community and say, this is my city. I want to knock on every door. I want to meet these people. I want to get my people to invite others. When a church is exciting, people invite other people. If your church is dead and boring, nobody wants to invite people to that dead and boring church. So whatever it takes, whether it's more baptisms, or great worship, or whatever it is, get some exciting things happening in your church. Such good
advice, Wesley. Tell us real quickly about a life that you've seen changed by the gospel.
I was in Puerto Rico. I was one of those days when, you want to go out there, preach and evangelize and do a training thing. And my host said, I couldn't get anybody to invite us to do a thing. So he said, we're just going to go to my brother's house and my mother's house. We'll visit them. And I was like, having a long face, dragging my feet. But God's plans are different. So anyway, long story short, I'm there. And then I say, hey, can I share with you this thing? And I pull out a piece of paper and I drew the 3 circles thing. And Ishmael is the guy name. He looks at it and says, wow, this is really real. Can I keep this? And I said, not only can you keep this, would you like to pray this prayer? And he said, yes. And of course, so he prayed with me. Then he said, I want to go take this and share with my wife. So he goes and shares with his wife. And she says, I've been asking you to go to church. I'm so glad that you've given your life to Jesus. I want to do this too. So they both, next Sunday, they went to a Wesleyan church. This is in Puerto Rico. So they go to Wesleyan church. And the pastor says, lovely to have you here. Tell me more about yourself. The guy describes himself. He says, I'm a sign language teacher, etc. The pastor says, in our church, we need sign language help. Would you help? So the guy starts getting involved in this church, not just attends church now. And then next time I go there to Puerto Rico, I see on his hip belt, he's got this huge keychain, like the one that janitors wear. I said, man, what's that? He says, not only do I do sign language at church, I'm a janitor at the church. And I'm like, get out of here. This guy goes from not knowing Jesus to joining the church, doing the sign language, and then taking care of the church. That's what happens when you just, even on a bad day on a Saturday, when you want to do other things, you end up sharing gospel with somebody. Life changed, a whole family changed. And I could tell you so many stories like that.
Wesley, thank you for your ministry. Thank you for answering God's call in your life. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for taking the time today to join us on Leadership Lessons.
I love you, man. I love KBC and what you guys are doing with a passion for evangelism. Let's go win some souls.
Amen.
Let's do it.
Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons. An audio podcast of this program is available on both Apple and Android devices. The Kentucky Baptist Convention was created by churches, for churches, to help churches reach Kentucky and the world for Christ. For more information about the KBC and the cooperative program which fuels our ministry, go to kybaptist.org. We'll see you next time on Leadership Lessons.